like to thank everybody for allowing me the chance to speak, especially AWS. On behalf of Lincoln Electric, my name's Jason Schmidt. I'm in the Technical Training Department and Education Department in Cleveland, Ohio. I've been with the company 9 years. Started out in learning about the welding side of things, all that Lincoln can teach me, and then went out into the sales side of things in southern Georgia for a couple years and been in the training side of things ever since. Focus on a lot of train-the-trainer programs, high school, college, skill trade instructors on welding technologies, product knowledge, what's new in the industry type thing, and also support our sales force and our distributors on new technologies. Also a member of the AWS Education Committee, and also the welding fabrication chairman at Skills USA. If any of you are familiar with the Skills USA competitions, you know, those are things that are definitely important for competition to drive students, you know, to excel and compete in the industry. So one of the things that I wanted to touch on today was a branch off of Skills USA was to talk about world skills and the importance of that. How many of you guys are familiar with world skills? How many of you have been to World Skills? How many of you have seen what goes on at World Skills? You know, so those are the type of things that I just want to touch on a little bit, because those are some things that I want you to be aware of, because that is you know, what's going on in the world and how the U.S. is compared to, and what other companies other countries are doing out there in the industry. So I'm going to touch a little bit on that, then get into some of our educational materials, some of the stuff that's been out in a while. I'll breeze over some of that if you've already heard about it, and then talk about some of the new things that are available for instructors. So first off, World Skills. You know, it's worldskills.org. This is a good reference site for you as instructors. You know, it's one of the things that when you go to these events, you're able to see just the type of caliber of students that are out there and the experts that are involved in these fields. When you go to these events, you know, there's 200,000 plus visitors. Got the chance to go to Leipzig, Germany. Lincoln Electric is a global industry sponsor of this event, so we're heavily involved at the World Skills level. Each year, the World Skills International General Assembly takes place. It's basically like a UN meeting. They have 2 representatives from every country that sit in there, and one is a welding expert or technical expert or some expert that shows up to represent that country, and another one is an official delegate. So those two members basically represent their country and all of their technical expertise in that country. Those individuals, their information is on their website. So if you go to worldskills.org, you know, you can have interaction between those experts and see what's going on in different countries, just to kind of gauge on what's happening. So I urge you guys, you know, they're all about improving education, and I think that's a great resource to have to check out on what's happening all across the world. Here's an example of those meetings. A lot of them have different flags set up on tables. If you look closely in the middle, you can see a picture of me. I'm way in the back. But just to get a little overview of what takes place at these events, welding, you know, is one of 46 competitions held at World Skills. I know at Skills USA there's about 100 different events, but in World Skills there's 46 events, and welding takes place in about 4 of those. So I'll go over some of that, but just to get an overview of what takes place in the actual single-man welding competition. The plate welding, the students take 5 to 6 hours to complete. They do pipe welding, you know, about 4.5-inch diameter pipe. They do stainless steel, 2 to 3 hours to complete that. Aluminum structure, 2 to 3 hours to complete. And then they have a pressure vessel, 10 hours to complete. And it has to be welded in position and you can see the type of skill that these guys have at that level. And it takes a lot of time to get to a student to that level. There's weld trials here in the U.S. to compete for that. Actually, I know Alex, who represented the U.S., was from Washtenaw Community College, and he placed silver medalist this year to Korea by fractions of a point. But he spent, I know he was telling his story here this week to a few of the sessions that he spent 14 hours a day during the week, about 10 hours on Saturday and 7 on Sunday, because he said he wanted to sleep in a little bit. And he did that for almost 4 years, because he tried twice to get here. So it takes a lot of practice, but just to show you, what's going on in the world, and there's representatives from other countries that do just as well in this area. Pressure vessels tested to 1,000 psi. So the other areas that are affected by welding at the World Skills event are sheet metal fabrication area. There's a metal construction area where this is something that they've developed, and they have bend brakes, they have shears, they have all kinds of tools there to help them build this, but these are team events that they put together to construct items like this. So it's pretty unique experience, eye-opening for me. That was my first experience this past year with this, but it's one thing to see what happens on the U.S. level, but just to see what happens on a global side of things it's just astonishing what happens. It's just like an Olympics. They get so excited about representing their country, and they're treated like athletes are here in the U.S. When you win the world championship, you get a visit to the White House and you get parades, but for welding that doesn't happen. But in other countries it does. Like that's what happens in Korea. In Korea you are a celebrity. You have a high-paying job for life. You have housing paid for. You've got a lot of things, a lot of benefits from doing this. So other countries have a high focus on skilled trades, and I think whatever we can do, and I know AWS is doing a great job of trying to promote that, but as individuals and in the welding industry, we got to keep pushing to raise our level globally. But World Skills is, other than competition, they're also an organization geared to pushing the skilled trades in the younger generation. So this is just an example of some students in India that during their World Skills event there, they're just massive amounts of people and students that come to these events, and all these kids are so geared and interested in, man, look at all these projects that I can build, and it's just something that's unique to see. And also, we've talked a lot about STEM this week, science, technology, engineering, and math, and World Skills is promoting that same thing. It's no different. So how do we get those students interested by using a skilled trade to get those points across? So what are we doing here at Lincoln to try to push STEM as well? One of the focuses that we're doing is putting together some lesson plans that incorporate STEM that can give instructors ideas on how to teach welding, but without the students really realizing that they're learning about chemistry or about math. So I know David Hernandez and some other speakers have given some ideas, but this is just another example of that. And I have some copies that I'm going to pass around that you guys can take a look at as an example. So this one is the edible electrode lesson plan. Now, I don't promote anybody to actually try to eat a real welding electrode. However, this is something that we tried out about a month ago with a group of students. They were actually FFA students, and these students, we set up a station and had edible electrodes. So if you look through the lesson plan, it kind of talks about some of the ideas that we had for that. But the station had some Oreo cookies, for instance, crumbled up. It had some Rice Krispie treats crumbled up. Had some green, sprinkles, and had some powdered sugar, for instance, and they all represented a different type of element that we put into welding electrodes. Okay, so what we did is we actually had a little ingredient card that we handed to them, and we had an assembly line. We actually had used a pretzel rod as the stick electrode, and we put some chocolate, melted chocolate around it, and the student came down with their tray of ingredients, and we gave them the cards. They had to come through, and they said, okay, I need 3 tablespoons of magnesium. And we're like, okay. We put that on, and if they had a 60-10 electrode or a stainless electrode, they had different ingredients, so they had to choose one of those 3. They went down the line and told us the ingredients, and they thought it was just, I'm just going to get a piece of food to eat. I get some Oreo cookies. This is great. Well, when they said I needed some manganese, I said, well, what does it do to the welding puddle? And the student was like, I have no idea. And I said, well, flip the card over and look at the back side. So you can see here an example of the card. The back side said, add strength to the weld. And they're like, huh, all right. And they move down the line, and they're learning a little bit about how that element affects the welding puddle. And at the end of it, the students were talking about it. Everybody was coming around and wanted to have a stick electrode. And, it generated excitement about learning about what's going into the weld puddle, but it was just a fun way to learn it. Okay, so that's just one of the examples that we're trying to push to help, elevate the learning, and even at a younger level. This is something that can be at a grade school level, but still would be fun for high school students to do. So we're looking for new ways to incorporate STEM within the welding industry, just using welding as a means to learn. Any questions on that? So we are going to be coming through and putting out hopefully a lot more of these, but those are some of the things that we're pushing towards here this year. Some of the other things that when I talk to a lot of educators, I try to push, what's happening in industry and what they're looking for. And a lot of the survival issues of our industry is safety, quality, and productivity issues. That's something that's been happening for years. You guys are aware of that. But one thing I want to urge you is to push these in your teaching so the students realize that these are some important things that they need to remember. It's one thing to learn the processes, but let's push. Every end user wants to have workers that are safe, and they want to be able to weld it up the first time and do it quickly, right? So that's something we want to push as our students to start thinking about that. So, and one of the things that we do for education, when you're talking about safety, is how do we keep our students engaged in thinking about safety and keep that on the forefront of their mind. There's a lot of videos out there that online you see people that aren't using the proper safety techniques. So it's one thing to keep pushing students that it is important. Yeah, you may get away with it 100 times, but it's that one time you wish you didn't do it, right? So keep pushing safety. It's definitely important. We want to make sure that all the workers go home and all the students go home to their families at the end of the day. So some of the tools that we're constantly trying to update and provide for instructors, some of them you see here, but we have documents, the E205, which summarizes the ANSI Z49.1. Those are something that are free of charge you can give to your students. The Welding Interactive DVD, that's something we've had out for a little while now, about a year, but that's something that has photo hunt, for instance, on there for students, where they see a lab and they see some things that are going wrong with it, and they have to click on, what's wrong with that picture. does that person not have gloves on? They click on it and it gives them a correct answer if they do or not. So it's just an interactive way for students. You know, safety can be dry at times, right? So how do you spice it up a little bit? So we're looking for new ways to do that, and those tools are available to you guys in the classroom. Obviously, AWS has some other fact sheets to show in the classroom. We also push for environmental, keeping the students, the fumes out of the breathing zone. So making sure they realize that I need to keep that there, and why. Why do I need to keep it out of the breathing zone? And those are things that we have the equipment to do that, but as you guys know as instructors, it's hard to get the students to actually use it properly. So we got to continue to keep educating them on how to do that. One of the things, quality. Our industry needs quality welders. So what can we do to help train our students and get them the knowledge they need before they hit the workforce? There's some low-cost training materials that we have on the James F. Lincoln Foundation website. It's a nonprofit organization that focuses on welding education. They're constantly there's several books coming down the pipe to talk about education and what's going on in welding. So those will be available soon. There's some books that you see on here that have been at the foundation for years. Procedure Handbook of Arc Welding. We're looking to continue to redevelop those. Metals and How to Weld them. We also have competitions within the foundation. Has anybody turned in a project through the foundation before? Seems like it's a best kept secret. So the foundation every year gives out over $50,000 in prize money, cash prize, to schools that turn in projects, turn in papers. There's several different categories. There's 6 categories. And you win anywhere from $1,000 down to $50. The last 3-4 years, everybody who's turned in a project has won some sort of money. Okay, so if you're already building projects throughout the year, you need to document those projects, take pictures, and talk about how you built it, and you turn it into the foundation, and the top ones get recognized, and they get put into a book that's sold through $10 through the foundation to give other instructors ideas on what they can build in the classroom. Okay, so those top prizes are $1,000, and they go all the way down to $50. One of the new competitions this year is Division 6, and at that's my bottom note there, the innovative teaching ideas. That is one of the things they're talking about, lesson plans. So a lot of you instructors already have good ideas and have been having unique ways to teach students. So if you're willing to share those, you can put those and enter those into the foundation and win up to $1,000. And it's just a way to get those ideas out there to help out other instructors to be able to keep the students engaged in the classroom. And what are unique ways to keep STEM involved in welding? Okay, so I urge you, those can be found on the James F. Lincoln Foundation website. There is a link from our website if you need to get over from lincolnelectric.com. But you can go straight to that website and get that information. Other free items that are available to you, we have training guides that have been out in the field for a while, stick electrode pocket guides, GMAW welding guides, a wide variety of welding guides that give you procedures that you could use, kind of some information behind what are the different types of gases and their penetration profiles, for instance, and how that affects the arc. Those are available to you. You can get those off our website and get PDFs for free, or we can ship you a hard copy for free as well. Educational posters. This is something that are free of charge as well. You can put those up in your classroom. We're constantly looking at new ideas. We have several posters in the queue ready to be printed. So if there's things that are out there that you wish you had, or you're like, man, I just want a poster on this, or I need some training materials on this, don't hesitate to contact me or someone in our department that you know, those are the things that we get feedback and we're like, okay, we need to make something like this, and that'll be something that we can put out in following years. No Teacher Left Behind pack of 6 CDs have been out for a while. Anybody not seen these yet? So those are things that have been out for a while, but basically they give PowerPoint talking points for instructors. You can edit these slides and arrange them if you don't want to talk about a certain topic. Those are something that we used to sell about 10 years ago for, you know, we've made some improvements to it, but we used to sell a similar package for $1,000, but we've given it away for the past 7 years for free. So that's something that's available. A lot of theory behind the different welding processes that are available to you. We have some curriculum that's online that you can download off our website. It's got instructor guides that go along with it. This one's just for arc welding basics, stick welding, and MIG welding. But it does have facilitator guides that talk you through step by step on ideas on demonstrations to do in the lab, what thickness of material, what amperage you should set it at, and it gives you those instructors a step-by-step technique. We also have videos that go along with those. We have a variety of videos. These are HD videos that are available as an example of pulse welding vertical up. So it's one thing that I think is important as instructors, that you can fast-track students to get the aha moment that they need by showing some videos like this in the classroom. That's clearer than looking through a welding hood, to be able to talk about what the puddle looks like. Because I know as instructors, you know, you say, hey, look over my shoulder, do you see my technique? Do you know what I'm talking about? And they shake their head yes, and they have no idea. Right? Or you grab their hand and do the same thing, and you say, do you understand it? You see it? They say, yeah, but all they see is a big bright light, and they don't realize it. But here you can put it up in the classroom and say, all right, this is how the puddle moves. You know, you can get everybody on the same page to speed up that learning process when they actually get the hands-on in the room. So these videos are available for you guys as well, free of charge. Other things we do for instructors, we have our welding school in Cleveland, Ohio is open to you, free of charge, 1 week a year. As an instructor, you can take any one of our courses. We have all the different arc welding processes. We have a motorsports class that gets into more unique alloys like titanium, chromoly. We have pipe welding courses. We have our basic robotic programming courses. All these are available as instructors free of charge, 1 week a year. So you just have to pay your way to get back, but all the materials that you get, all the welding coupons you weld on, those are all free of charge. And you sit in that course just like a student. You get the hands-on technique. You see how our instructors teach it. So even if you are experienced in a certain process, you say, hey, man, I just want to go and get some new ideas see somebody else how they teach it. So those courses are available to you and those are offered all throughout the year. So as long as as long as there's a spot available, you're welcome into that course for free. You had a question?
You answered it.
All right. Doing good with that. I'm reading your mind. We also have state workshops. So there are certain states that we've worked with where they say, hey, we have 20 instructors, we have 15 instructors, we'd like to set something up locally. And if we do get a demand for that, we will go to different states and use a local facility and conduct a workshop there. Anywhere from 1 day to 5 days, depending on the need for that certain state. But we've done ones in Washington, we've done some in Louisiana, Georgia, Indiana, Pennsylvania. We've bounced around and done a lot of them across the country, but those are specialized ones that we will do as needed. So those are a little bit of things that we do to try to keep up the quality of the students and the instructors, so we can keep those information out to you guys on what's going on in the industry. So what are we doing to keep the productivity in the mind of students, or how do we speed up the learning curve of students? One of them is those videos and the training tools. But I know another one is the virtual reality welding. You know, I know you guys have probably seen this by now. It's been out several years. We do have those at our booth here at the show. But this is just a way to increase the speed of the learning process of a student. Iowa State did an independent study. They took students through a traditional welding program and took one through a hybrid, 50% of the time on virtual, 50% of the time in the lab. The hybrid class passed more certifications in a faster amount of time. Just because they're learning that technique, they're learning the body positioning, and they're being able to read the puddle a little bit. I'm not going to lie, it's not the real thing, and we're not trying to say that you can use that to train welding only. You have to have the real thing, but it's a way to speed up that process before they get into the regular welding lab. There's also some lesson plans that go along with that we're developing. We do have some developed already, but we're constantly working on those projects. So it's one thing to have a piece of equipment, but how do I use it as an instructor and integrate it into my class? And those are some things that we're continually working on and are available to those who do have virtual reality in their classrooms. Basically what they have is WPSs, and they have to follow along those, learn how to read those, and have a step-by-step on what to do on the virtual reality unit, and then how to go over into the lab and do a similar technique. Some upgrades that are out this year, we just announced at the show for the virtual reality unit. We have a new lap joint, new pulsing modes that are going on with this unit. That's for the 360, the Vertex 360. So now this unit can do stick on 60-10, 70-18, 60-13. They can do MIG welding. It can do pulse. It can do short arc, spray, pulse, an STT mode, and it also has pipe welding, and it does aluminum, stainless. So these are all upgrades and you can kind of modify your unit for what you need. Some other project-based lessons that we have that are available for the Vertex. So we have a couple different variations of that and more to follow. So stay tuned. So what else do we do to showcase productivity? One of the things is our PowerWave platform. Our PowerWave platform is something that industry is pushing towards. You guys have talked about a lot of technology in the field that you're using. We've talked about phones and how you guys can utilize the apps in the classroom. But we can also use the technology that end users are using currently today and showcase that in the classroom to get students exposed to it. So this is a C300. It's an educational pack to be versatile for the classroom, but also show and highlight the high-end technology that's in the machine. It's a multi-process machine that'll do stick, DC, TIG, MIG, and flux core all in the same unit. But one of the things I want to highlight is what are some of the computer technology in the machine that you can utilize in the classroom. So these are the PowerWave software solutions that are free with these machines that you can utilize in the classroom. One of them is PowerWave Manager. Basically, it's a way, as an instructor, you can train that welder to do what you want it to do. You can set profile limits, so you can utilize all the bells and whistles on the machine, or you can lock them out. So if you want a student to only see what wire feed speed will do to their arc, you can lock out all the other buttons and only have the student use wire feed speed. Same thing with the voltage. So you can modify different things, and you can set welding parameters and limits. So if you want a student to only have a small window to change things, you can do that. Okay, so those are some of the things that PowerWave Manager can do, and all you do is hook up your computer to it to tell it what to do, and the software is free to do that. Another of the software solutions involved in our PowerWaves is Checkpoint. Checkpoint is a cloud data area that basically allows you to, all the information that comes from your machine can get sent to the cloud, and you can get onto any internet you know, with your computer, log into your checkpoint account and see what's going on the machines. So how is this useful? A lot of end users, it's designed to being able to, I can be here and I can see all the welding machines that are going on at our Cleveland facility, if they're all on the network. So as an instructor, you can sit at your desk or have your phone, it has the apps for the phone as well, and see how many students are welding at what time, how many welds they're making, and what type of, how much weld deposit they're putting down. And so it's a way to have a tracking on what they're doing. And you know, in industry, they don't like to be tracked as a welder, but it's just, it's a reality. That's what's happening. You know, from a quality standpoint, manufacturers need to know what's happening into their parts, who's making those welds. So if something fails in the industry, they can come back and track on what happened, why it happened, and they can fix the problem. So if we can expose our students to that in the classroom, I think it's important, because I think the generation's more receptive to this, and it makes it more interesting to them that, hey, welding is not just putting down a weld over and over, but there's some technology involved into that, and it may spark some interest to go down some different paths within welding.
What kind of information is collected with that? Is it just argon time, or is it going to tell me more about the settings that my student might be using? Or?
Well, here, I know it's kind of hard to read, but basically it's just a data system that pulls the data out of the machine. So it can tell you how many welds are being made, if the welds are out of limits, for instance, if you have some settings set. It'll tell you a weld score, which I'll go into detail here in a minute, but the amount of arc time that student has over the period of the class period. So how much is actually on time, how long the arc is on, the deposition, how much weld deposit was put down, how much wire was remaining, so how much did they use during that classroom, the time since the last weld was made. So there's a lot of things that it can track, but it's like a birth certificate for every weld that they make. So you know how many welds they make and how long that duration was. And so you can see if booth 1 had 10 welds during that class time and booth 10 had 50, you can tell who's putting in the work or who's doing the welds. So when you actually tell them that you're not putting in the effort, you can have some data that supports that. Do you have a question?
I was just curious, is it linked to an individual or to a unit?
So there is software that you can type in someone's name, but obviously if there's multiple students using a certain machine, you're going to have to type in that information. But there is, some of our end user manufacturers do have a scanner that they can link into it where they scan employee badges. That same thing can be done in the school system, but there's an extra cost to that, where the software and everything is free.
How does that information get from the machine into the class? Is it wired in?
Currently it's wired in. So there are Ethernet ports on the back of the machines that take that information to your network.
Does that work for all 3 processes on that machine?
Correct.
Okay. It's built into the machine already?
Yes.
You don't buy any extra sending?
No, it's all built in, and it basically pulls that data about 4 times a second to see what's happening.
We got the see-through enter about 2 weeks ago, so we've been playing around with like the Weld Score and stuff like that quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I just realized right now that all we've been doing is playing with the Weld Score on different MIG modes, pulse or whatever. Does that work in the same fashion with TIG and stick also, or is it different?
Yes, it's basically pulling that data from what you train it to do, and I'll talk about Weld Score here in a second, but yes, you can do it for other processes. One more?
I just wonder what kind of price point you were looking at for that machine with the cloud and everything like that.
The educational package that comes with the stick and the TIG and the MIG leads will ballpark around $7,000 to $8,000 for that unit. And it comes equipped with all the software.
That's the educational price?
Educational price is about 10% off for.
Say rough
These are, I'm giving you list prices. We also go, you know, we have a lot of distributors that sell, so normally you can get a better price than that. But just to give you a quick summary of some of the screenshots that are available, you know, here's the status on the time since it was last welded, you know, how many welds were made within the past 24 hours, the wire remaining. You know, so it's a lot geared for end-user manufacturing, so you can show this even if you just want to show it as what's happening in industry, which I definitely recommend. You know, put up a screen in your classroom somewhere, and you can show an example. Or if you want to utilize it as a teaching tool for yourself, you would need multiple stations, and you can use this in tracking information for your own classroom. So just it talks about some productivity, you know, the percent of time the machine was welding versus when it's not welding. Consumable package, you can track consumables, you know, how much you know, time is left on your consumable package. You know, this is designed for industry, so when you have multiple stations on a manufacturing floor, you want to keep the amount of downtime at a minimum. So this, you can send email alerts to whoever you want to say, hey, the machine is running out of wire, you need to get there soon. We also have Weld Score, which I'll talk about. And with Weld Score, what's unique about this is now as an instructor, you can make a weld on this machine, program it, and the student has to mimic exactly what you did. So, and it'll give you a score based out of 100 on how well they mimicked your weld. If the student pulls a longer stick out, it'll give them a poor score. If they change the gas mixture or the flow rate, it could give them a poor score. So it's a way, it doesn't tell you exactly what's wrong with it, but it tells the student that, hey, I'm not doing it correctly, so I need to ask questions on how do I make improvements. So the idea, you know, of speeding up that student's productivity on learning the weld, you know, you can utilize in the perfect world a virtual reality unit and track that student's progress on how well they're learning the technique, and then transfer that over into real welding and still have a scoring system to say how well they are doing compared to what you did. The only difference is that the Weld Score on the real welding, you need to be there to tell them what they're doing wrong. They only know that it's something different than what you did. Where the virtual reality is actually giving them feedback on exactly what they're doing wrong. Yeah?
Do you have to train it every time? Like if we change weldments, we're doing stuff, do I have to train every machine?
You would have to train. Yep.
You can't like preload that in, right?
Correct. Currently. But no, there are ways that you can take on the Weld Manager and do multiple stations with it.
Oh,
Yeah.
can you, let's say, I set up a specific profile for flat, horizontal, and vertical. Can I save 3 different scores? Maybe one week we're going to do all of our flat welds and have a weld score based on that, and then load in the other information for the other types of welds.
Yeah, so they're right now they're tied to a welding memory profile. So there are 8 memory locations on the front of this machine, so you can have 8 different memory locations at once, or you'd have to flash in more information if you wanted 8 more settings. So basically it's something that you have 8 individual settings currently at any given time. Another thing you can do with this data, you know, manipulate it however you'd like. There's graphs and things that you can use to get output or how much productivity you're getting out of that student or that machine in any given time. An average of your weld scores over a period of time you can do as well. And like we talked about before, you can tie in an actual student if you typed in, if that student was only on that machine for a couple-hour period or something, you can type that information in prior to their start, so you know every one of these welds is tied to that student. So Weld Score, we touched on it briefly, but it's basically a way to analyze what you've done versus what the student's doing. It's not good versus bad, but it's just saying that something is different than what you just told me that it should be, and it gives them a score based on how close that is. So we talked about the gas mixture, for instance. There's been some companies that have put out parts that were designed for a 90-10 gas or a 75-25 gas, and someone put on 100% argon on it. They made a weld that looked good, the visual was good, but the penetration wasn't there. And those parts went out in the field and failed. So in that case, if Weld Score was on it, it would have given them a poor score based on that. Gas flow, for instance. The gas flow gets to a certain point, may start to get internal porosity or visual porosity that score would also go down, and the machine would recognize that. Gas flow variation, here's just an example. There's some cut and etched pieces to kind of show you the different penetration profiles and how that gas flow variation affected that, and the score that was relative to those points. Contact tip to work distance variations. So if they pull a longer stick out or a stick out too close, those are things that machine will pick up. If it goes out of position, if you train it to go the first pass, right in the middle of that joint, if they go out of position, it'll knock down the score. So those are things that the machine is constantly giving feedback to the machine, the power source, and then that's sending that information to a database control in the cloud that can track that information. Now this is an example. We were actually at a show similar to FabTech where we have all of our machines at our headquarters on this network. And so if you look on the left side, it kind of breaks down, just an example of some of our machines that are on the network at different stations. And if you look at the bottom right corner, that is the weld score that was happening, and you can see the huge drop in the weld score. Do you see that? So that was going on at the show as we were demonstrating this live, and we saw a huge drop at one of the stations in weld score. And actually, our product manager was looking at this and was like, something's not right. And this is our manufacturing floor pumping out parts. And he ends up calling back to our headquarters and says, what's going on at this station? Those weld scores are really low. And they found out that the operator put in a different size contact tip. And it was causing that score to drop very low because it wasn't getting the right connection that it needed to get. So it dropped the scores down. So then they took all those parts and looked them over for quality to make sure that there were no issues. So these are some things that you can pick up on as what's happening in industry that you can talk about in the classroom. One of the new things that also are involved in these power wave solutions is Weld Sequencer. That's something we just launched here at the show, but it's a way that manufacturers were requesting to, how do I get a repetitive part from a manual operator over and over? Something that's complex, for instance. So now we have Weld Sequencer that's tied to the welding machine that gives them a step-by-step on what they need to do to complete a final project. Okay, so it'll say, for instance, you have to tack weld first in this spot, and it'll give them a screenshot that you can see up here on where that tack needs to go, and that student or that operator has to make that weld. And then step 2 is to make this weld. So it's a way to basically train new operators faster in the industry. So now I can take a welder that hasn't welded this part up before. I can take him and give him a step-by-step instruction, and he can weld up that part and do it repetitively. And it's a way to also, now if they miss a weld, or they weld too much on a certain area, it'll send an alert because it's tied to the welding machine. It'll send an alert to say, hey, something's wrong with this part. So from a quality standpoint, it's very important. But it's also something that, as instructors, you know, you could utilize that in the classroom in the future, where if you had a project based that they needed to weld up in the classroom or in the welding lab, they can actually have a step-by-step on how to do that and do it right the first time without you having to walk. You know, you guys, as instructors, I know, have anywhere from 20 to 30 students at times. So this is a way to help instructors to be able to get students to facilitate their lessons on their own and for you to oversee that.
Are you
Yes.
saying that we can use that in the same way that we can use Weight Manager and Checkpoint, or is that separate?
The capability, the machine that you currently have, like a C300 for instance, has the capability of doing this. The only thing that would be separate is basically the monitor screen that interacts with the actual power wave, so a student can see what the steps are. So as an instructor or a welding engineer, you know, you guys would actually design the sequence that needed to be done, the step-by-step sequence, and you would create that, and it's a simple drag and drop, basically simple drag and drop software program. And then the Weld Sequencer would be for the operator, and they would have a monitor that they could click through, and it would tell them their step-by-step function on how to produce that project. There's just a picture of the drag and drop. So they would just take those, slide it in, whether it's a tack weld, whether it's a spot weld, or whatever that weld may be. You input that information, and if there's checking points, you can have that in there as well. So you may say, make these 3 welds, and then there's a stopping point that you have to get approval to move forward, for instance. So there's points in that you can tweak that as an instructor or as an engineer on a plant floor to make that happen.
I noticed that some of those pictures got a little green circle around the different weldments. Would it show like a red circle if it was a weld score below a 70 or something like that? So it would identify which welds I had a problem?
So during your data on checkpoint will show you if there's an alert or if something happened, or you can send an email to yourself anytime there's an alert. Or you can check that, but there will be an alert, a little triangle with a little exclamation point that says something happened. And now, on these machines, you can have it just send you an alert, just so it tracks it, logs that information. You can have it finish that weld and stop it completely until you go and reset the machine, or you can have it stop immediately and then have to restart it later. So to keep from, in a manufacturing floor, keep it from putting down a lot of bad welds, it'll stop it immediately to have a quality control person check it, but you can also talk about that in the classroom as well. So if a student's starting to get way out of parameters, you can have it stop them, and then they would have to reset it and do it again. So what's updated in Checkpoint, which is basically the data controlled site, you can also use that for Weld Sequencer. So it will talk about cycle time of a project. So from start to finish now, it'll track cycle time, how much arc time was on that project, the total deposition, how many welds were put into that project versus how many were supposed to be. So there's a lot of tracking information project to project versus just weld to weld now with the Weld Sequencer. And that was something that was pushed by our customers to make something like that. And it's just something that's new in the industry that you can talk about in the classroom to your students, because that's what they're going to see. I mean, more and more companies are going this route, so it's something to look at in the future. Obviously, another way to speed up productivity is robotics. You know, a way to stay as a country. You know, we constantly have to push to compete against other countries in productivity, and robotics is something that we're not going to get away from. You know, it's something that industry is using. So to get students exposed to that early on, I think is still important. And if you do have robotic programming in your classroom, this is an educational robotics cell that those wings can collapse and go in and out of doorways. You can put it on a 115 volt and teach programming in the classroom, and then wheel it into the lab, hook up the welder, and then make some welds with it. We do have project-based lessons that go along with this as well to help how do I incorporate this, or what kind of projects can I do with my students in the classroom, so you can utilize those project-based lessons as well. Do we have a question?
Yeah, what would a machine like that run? Turnkey, ready to go?
For this unit here, it'll run a little over $40,000, but it can't. That's for the basic package. If you want, you know, some of the upgrades to be able to run like on a 115 and a 220, for instance, there's some upgrades to that, but under $50,000 can get you what you need.
So what about training the trainer? I mean, I got to learn how to use this
Yep.
so I can effectively teach my students this, as opposed to having them teach me how it works.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have training back in Cleveland where if you buy a unit, then you have up to, I believe, 3 to 4 slots for instructors to take and take the course for free. But you can also take a programming course through the Teacher Observer program back in Cleveland that I talked about earlier. 1 week a year, free of charge, you can take a basic programming course. So in closing, I just wanted to show you a little picture that I thought was interesting as we go through and talk about and see end users. Does this look familiar to anybody? Anybody have machines in their shop that have marks on it to talk about where to set it? You know, this is what traditional welding has looked like over the years. You know, so they've got the settings written all on the side and of the welder, your basic knob, you know, wire feed speed, voltage. But like we've talked about in a lot of the sessions this week there's a new age of welding that's out there, and the technology in these machines are getting you know, just more and more complex. But if everybody understands how they work and you know, like we talked about, how younger kids can get through cell phone apps very quickly. You know, my daughter just turned 2 today, and she gets on my wife's phone and slides it and tries to unlock it and watches Elmo on YouTube on that thing before she was 2. You know, so it's something that the students can grasp these technologies in the welding machines and the data control technology and run with it. So it's one thing to let's, you know, push this in the classroom, even if you don't or aren't able to have a machine like this, to be able to just to get the students exposed to it somehow on this is what's happening in the industry, just so they're ready for it or aware of it.